You know what I mean? I've been working as a therapist for almost 20 years, and one of the benefits of being a therapist is we start at a certain time and we end at a certain time, and I get to experience every day what it feels like to have a container. And inside of container, magic can happen. And the looser the container, kind of the less potent the magic. And I'm pretty committed to potent magic. So bear with me. And this is not unrelated to what I'll be talking about. Come on in. We must have been waiting for you. Okay, now the door is sealed. Okay. So let me tell you what we're going to do today. We got an hour together. We are lucky. I'm going to lecture on this topic of connecting our hearts and connecting our sexual selves. So I want you to learn from me. But I'm also going to be inviting you into exercises. I also want you to learn from you. So anyone who has come to any of my talks knows that I highly value the experiential. Don't take my word for it. Show up and try. Feel it in your body, which is a tenet of holistic health, right? Kind of being collaborators in our process. So you'll hear from me. I'll have the group participate in partner exercises. There's 4. And then at the end of the time, I'll let you know ways that you can go deeper with this work if you desire to. Good? You on board? Yeah. All right. Ooh, I like hearing that. Yeah. Are we on board?
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. That's a good start. So let me start by telling you about myself. I'm very fortunate to know many of you, but for those who I don't, I actually grew up in Plano, Texas. So I live and work now in Dallas, but I've only been back for the last 4 years. I actually grew up at Parker and Custer, not far away from here at all. So it's really a treat to give this talk in Plano. I've been part of the Holistic Festival of Life since it started. There's been 6, which means I have lugged my talks and my booths here 6 times, and so it's really an honor to see how much this has grown and how that parking lot has pushed out and out and out. I just feel really excited. I grew up in East Plano, as I said, and I think a lot of my adult life was running away from my experience in Plano and running away from a childhood where I felt like, I don't fit in, and I don't really have my needs met here, and this isn't where I belong. I went to other lands to find out where I belong, and I came back 4 years ago to share what I'd learned, and how exciting to find out, there's all of these tribes people here doing the same work. So it's just a real joy to bring this back. But now I work as an intimacy psychologist. My PhD is in clinical health psychology, and I help singles, couples, and groups connect at the simplest level, at body, mind, sex, voice. So it's an honor really to do that, and I'm a practitioner of that myself. So I want to say just kind of one more piece in terms of the introduction. So I have a lot to teach. I've done a lot of trainings, I've worked with a lot of people, but I'm also very human, and I try to teach from that place where, I've been depressed. I had that year. I've made awful choices in a relationship that I profoundly regret. I've learned many things the hard way, the sort of ways that we don't forget. We really strive. I've really strived to not do that again. I embarrass myself. I live with shame. Sometimes I don't listen to my body and push too hard. So I speak from a place where I have a lot of fruits of lessons hard won. I'm part of the human experience too. Okay. My hope is that when the leaders become human, the humans become leaders, and we all grow up together. All right. Yeah. Let's take one more deep breath in. Let it out. Okay. So what am I talking about today? Oh yes, connecting heart and sex. So I want to start with a discussion question, and we'll do partner exercises, but I do have one just kind of group discussion question, and it's kind of a simple one, but when we feel lonesome or lonely, maybe it's a Friday night and you're like finishing work and you're like, I want to go hang out with my friends, I want to do something interesting, or it's any random afternoon of the week and you're like, I feel down, I need connection. What do we do? How do we get those needs met? So I'd love to hear just throwing your ideas out into the room. You don't need to raise your hands. How do we go about getting our connection needs met? What are our options on the menu? Like what?
Speak up.
Yeah, you go to my services. Okay, you cheat.
Pick up a phone call.
Yeah, pick up the phone and call a friend. What else?
Friends and family.
Yeah, you go to friends and family. Maybe you see them in person if you're lucky. Pick up a phone.
Facebook events.
Yeah, either being on Facebook. Sometimes we can actually virtually get quite a few needs met, or we find an event on Facebook. Yeah, I'm gonna go there. Or meetup. Yeah.
Messaging
So yeah.
of various sorts.
messaging of various sorts. So electronic connection. Good, okay. What about sex? Well,
Yeah.
but really. What's that? What did you say? I forgot my person. What did you say?
I just was thinking, like, you gotta get to the place that leads to the sex first.
Sure, but what if you're in a relationship? You've already done that work.
Oh, yeah, well,
You reach out to your partner, or your sweethearts. We all have different formats for relationship, okay? That's there too, right? I mean, you tell me, is that part of what is sort of in the repertoire of possibilities for getting our connection
Yes.
needs met? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, affirming, resounding yes in the back row. Okay. So the interesting thing that I've noticed is that we sort of organized our relational world into this binary. Okay, binary means kind of we reduced it to an either or, one of two sets of options. Either, you said in the back, friends and family, so we go and we talk and we hang out and we say, hey, I need a little support, or we write about how we're doing. Or we can connect with our sexual partners. And a lot of times, this may or may not be true for you, so I make a generalization, take it on if it is true. A lot of times, we really kind of reserve our truest selves for our sexual partners. Like, that's where I can really let it all hang out, right? That's where I'll let you know kind of who I am. Like, we may or may not let the full range of our friends see what we're suffering with. But when it comes to, like, my spouse or my girlfriend or, my lover, often, not always, but often, that's where we can go for our deepest connection. Okay, so kind of with that as the premise, one possible generalization. What can happen is when we don't have access to an intimate sexual partner, okay, and that may be some of us in this room, we can go without that deep feeling of connection. When we have it so relegated to only in sex do we have that deep connection. But then here's the catch. Anyone ever had very unsatisfying sex? I know I have. And separate from the physical mechanics of what makes what we call kind of bad sex, that's there. But often it can happen because we're actually not kind of emotionally feeling connected to that person. So it can be, I think casual sex can sometimes be awesome. And I think connection and sex, or sex inside of a connected relationship, can be awesome. But in either of those cases, we cannot be embodied, really present, really showing up, really saying what's true for us, which is what our talk is about today. So, in sex, we can be malnourished. In our friendships, if we don't know how to let ourselves revealed, we can be malnourished, which leaves us with a pretty lonesome experience. So what I want to talk about is that connection, being able to, not just in sex, contrary to the topic of today's talk, not just in sex, but in every point that we have of contact with our relational world, being able to make that kind of connection between our inner life and our outer life, so that whether I choose to have sex with you or not, if I'm going to be connected to you, it can be nourishing. I can have integrity with these words, connecting with what lives in here, and then I can feel what's seen and heard. If I'm going to be in the bedroom with you, and if I'm going to take my clothes off, I'm going to also learn how to take my mask off from my vulnerable self. And that's how we have the most nourishing, delicious, energizing, inspiring sex, which is what I believe sex was designed for. Do I get an amen on that one? Amen! You got big head nods in the back. There's always a head nodder in the room. It's usually my friend Christy, but my friend back there is the head nodder. Okay, so that's what this talk is about today. We're going to go through a couple different obstacles in the way of that, hopefully getting your input along the way, and talk about some antidotes. Okay. So I didn't say this, but I do welcome questions throughout. If you have a question, raise your hand so I can call you. So what I was thinking about as I was putting this talk together is how much, when we're having connected, good, nourishing, awesome sex, that we're sensitized, that we can feel our bodies. We can feel the simplest breeze across our neck. I can feel when he touches my toe. I can feel that little pulsing in my chest when I get a text. I can feel. But what we're contending with as creatures who want to actually have this kind of connected relationship with our lives is a culture that has us being numb. So numb is actually an experience. When we think of numb, we think of the absence of sensation, but there's actually a sensation to numb. So I was trying to define it for myself. For me, numb, when I feel numb, I feel leaden. I feel heavy. I feel spacey. Like I actually kind of can't quite track like where I am in space. I'm likely to literally bump into things. I can't quite track my conversation, so I'll get lost in a communication. I'll be more tangential. Sometimes I feel sleepy, but it's not even sleepy. It's more like kind of this vacuum or void. Anyone have any other thoughts about what numb actually feels like?
Brain wrapped in cotton.
Brain wrapped in cotton. Good. What is numb? It's hard to name because a lot of us have different parts of us that feel numb so often that it's like the air we breathe.
For me, it's just kind of an empty feeling.
Empty. Nancy.
Not present.
Not present. That's why it's hard to kind of describe it, right? We have to be inside of ourselves to describe it. Did you have something, Emily?
Yeah, I feel sometimes like this gnawing depression that I can't really get in contact with, but it's there.
Beautiful. I'm going to say that just so everyone can hear. A gnawing depression. I love that, like something eating at me that I can't quite get into contact with, but I know it's there. Okay. So it can feel real powerless. So just trying that on, this culture of numb. So I want to talk about 4 factors that I think contribute to a world that says to us, stay half asleep. Don't pay attention. Don't let that impact you, and definitely don't reveal ourselves. Okay, this culture of numb. So I trust you are here because everyone in this room to some degree has a commitment to not be numb. You wouldn't be here, you know what I mean? You would not be here if you didn't. So some of this may feel familiar. So it's just in the efforts, in the spirit of helping us all find even more resilience in this culture. Okay. So number 1, we make it hard to have feelings. I like to take walks, and I was walking the other day to the yoga studio, and I was passing someone by at the lake, and we just had a couple seconds of FaceTime, and he goes, "How are you?" And I was gone before he'd asked the question. But what I realized, "How are you?" is a statement. It's not actually it ends with a period, right? It's the equivalent of a hi, which is perfectly fine. Except for "How are you?" also has the potential to heal us if we use it well. But we rarely do. I mean, people who come to my events and my close friends and a lot of people who have their own practices, I bet you're alternatives to this convention. But the convention is to put a mask on it. So when I'm struggling, this is so much true, oddly enough, in my own family, if we're not careful. But when we're struggling, it's to go, I'm fine. I saw a friend yesterday who I respect a lot, and I said, "How are you?" And she goes, "A good friend of mine just died in my arms." And I said, "Good God, like, how are you?" And she turned, and with her face tight, she said, "Well, my family's alive, and I have a good life, and I'm doing well, so there's a lot to be grateful for." And then she went around her way, and I was like, oh, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, that totally doesn't match how I feel in connection to you. Yes, that's the thing on top. And luckily I was like, whoa, I took a breath, and I was able to just hold compassion over there, knowing that she was just doing her best. But that's really the options we have available to us as we put something on top of it and make it look better than it is. Oh, what did I write? Oh, yes, in Dallas. See, one of the reasons I ran away from Dallas is that it just seems so much a culture that I personally struggle with is it doesn't matter how it feels, just make it look good. So, and I was like a dorky kid. I was not the popular kid, you know what I mean? I wore a Catholic school uniform for 8 years, so when I got to public school, I went to Clark, just down the street in high school. I had no idea how to dress myself. I didn't know how to match my clothes, let alone talk to boys, and it was just like, oh, it's hell socially. I was good as a little sort of brainy student. I was very academic, and that's kind of where I hid out. So it's this experience of as long as my body is trim, you can't see my heart bloated with pain. And it's just like, throw a dart, in any group of people that feels like it's endemic to what we're contending with, the culture of numb. And so I've gotten better about this over the years in terms of myself, revealing when I'm hurting. And I practice it because I have a lot of ambition, I have a lot of drive, a lot of times I go too fast for my own good. I don't sleep enough, I'm in pain, but I really need to not do something and I do it anyway. So I struggle with this too, actually going at the pace that my insides need. So number 1, we don't make it okay to have feelings. So what I'd like to invite you to do is the first exercise. If you're not sitting next to someone, find someone to sit next to. This is going to take a partner. So go ahead and find someone you're sitting.
It was refreshing to be faced with the challenge to see how you feel.
Oh, lovely. Refreshing to even ask me, how do I feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check in.
Oh, and we have to actually register that we're a person to even begin to ask the question, how do I feel? Isn't that a funny one? In my meditation all the time I go, I'm a person, I'm a person, I'm a person. You know what I mean? Oh, there's an experience in here, huh? Good, beautiful, refreshing. What else?
Listen to.
Listened to. Ah, the other side of it. Can you say just a little bit more?
Just that we're actually taking a moment to hear exactly what she felt, and then she took that moment to just hear exactly what I felt.
Lovely.
That's it, nothing else more than that.
Lovely. Oh, so simple. I'm not asking you to fix my problems.
Yes.
You know, I feel tired. I don't need any of your drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like, this is just
Yes.
how I, yeah. So listening, huh? There's something, you know, kind of a less is more to it. Lovely. Let's get one or two more.
Honest.
Honest? Can you say more? You said honest?
Yeah.
Yes. Would you be willing to elaborate on that?
Because you're being true vocally to how you really feel and things.
I don't know if this is true for you or not, but especially before doing these practices, I was rarely honest. Not like I was lying. I didn't even know what the alternative was. I would say a synonym for honest is having integrity. Just what I'm saying out here is true in here. Oh, wow. It's freeing. Beautiful. One more. I think, Clay, you had your hand up.
What I noticed is I wanted to say more than that
Ah.
one word. Because I said I was feeling caffeinated,
Uh-huh.
but I also said I was feeling tired.
Uh-huh.
And I felt like I needed to explain more about how those two go together.
Allowing ourselves to be complex humans, with our contradictions. Though, to me, that makes perfect sense. Okay, well, the final one. Thank you.
Being allowed to exist, just being human, that's great.
My work is done. That's what we're going for. That is the template. That is the template for every other point of contact. So lovely. I'm so glad you said that. Okay. So number one, the antidote to this factor of a culture that would have us not feel what we feel is to begin to do the work. We can do this in our own kind of personal introspection, but to also do the relational work of finding the words and listening to others' words so that we actually get a muscle for being honest with ourselves and others, being heard, feeling that refreshing experience of tuning into ourselves. So, number one, here's the challenge. Number two, in terms of the cultures that kind of numb us out, you know, put us to sleep a little bit, I think it's around boundaries. And I'm all on fire about boundaries these days, but I think if any of us isn't, we're not paying attention. I don't care who you are, what gender you are, what family you were raised in. With very few exceptions, the vast majority of us juggle with boundaries, violate inadvertently and unconsciously all the time, and are violated so often that we don't know the alternative. And this is not true of any one gender. I'm not singling out men, and I'm not singling out women. I absolutely positively see both, perpetuated by both. And it's actually less often that I see it be malintentioned. It's just unconscious. So one of the things that I've noticed is that one of the pulls to violate our own boundaries is this pressure, often socially, but sometimes sexually and everything in between, to say yes when it's not really a yes. Okay, so kind of a casual example. All my friends are going to this party, and it's Friday night, and it looks like fun, and all the cute guys are gonna be there, all the cute girls are gonna be there, but I'm tired. Like, I worked a long day, and actually what I need to do is to stay in bed. But everyone says go, so I go. Okay, anyone done that? Yeah, okay, I mean, it happens. Never. My parents want me to get a degree in a particular field that my family gets its degrees in, and my passion lies elsewhere. But I pursue this degree because that's the thing to do. It's not really my true yes, but I put all this money into it and all this time and so on, so I can be what, an accountant, or like, honestly, for reals, my PhD program was hell. But it was the thing that smart kids did, so that's what I did. And of course, I ended up being an intimacy coach because that's what I really wanted to do. And I happen to have a PhD behind my name and a lot of student loan debt to reckon with. But you know, I really wasn't a true yes to that PhD program, and I'll be recovering from it probably for a lifetime. Okay. And then a little more sensitive example: my partner has sexual demands that don't actually meet my needs in this moment, and we acquiesce. And so there's all these various ways where we lose track of our actual yes. Basically, we say yes when it's not a yes. And then we can't feel ourselves. Okay, so there's the numb, that's what happens. Because we have this internal static. And in order to live with that feeling of, I said yes, but I'm actually a hell no on the inside, we have to check out. It's a very uncomfortable feeling to have that conflict. Okay, if we check into the conflict, we change our answer. And so one of the antidotes I've found for that particular pressure that we experience to say yes when we're not a yes is to find our true no. Because when we find our true no, I don't want to go to the party, it sounds really great, I'll see you tomorrow, I need to sleep. No, I want to go to this hippie school because I want to live in Boulder, Colorado for this phase of my life because I like all the hippie folk. Or no, I'm not in the mood tonight. Or no, I don't want to be touched in that way, or whatever it is. When we find our true no, it liberates us so that when the yes comes, it actually fires up like a skyrocket. We know what it feels. There's real sensation there. That's the opposite of the culture of numb. True yes comes from our true no. So this one's a sensitive one. So before we do the exercise, I just want to pause and see, is there anything anyone wants to say here? Just a thought that's kind of burning on top that would have you kind of check into the room a little bit. Just any shares before we try an exercise to play this one out on boundaries. There may not be.
Boundaries are confusing.
Okay, if anyone agrees, we just do a little wiggle fingers. Boundaries are confusing. Anyone? Look around the room. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want to add a little more?
I was raised on the golden rule, and the way I would treat myself, the way other people treat themselves, is always different. So whenever I think I'm within these friendly, okay spaces, sometimes I find in hindsight, and usually way down, no, see, I was really upset about that thing you did there. Oh, I didn't know. I thought I was within the good boundaries. It's very confusing.
Very confusing. So what you're pointing to, which is an important one, is this delayed reaction that often happens, where we're in a high sensation moment, like either a lot of social pressure at a loud party where there's alcohol, or maybe like a hot and sexy moment where most of our clothes are off, or whatever it is, anywhere in between, right? And it may just be, you know, these social moments, but whatever it is. And it's hard to stay inside of ourselves, to stay checked in. And that's where that delayed reaction comes. When things settle down, we go, oh my God, what did I do? Okay? Or someone else says, hey, I actually don't like what you did, and we go, shoot, I didn't know. Okay, so we've got work to do, and I think our capacity to do it is intact. We just have to engage, find good allies along the way. Anyone else want to say anything else before we keep going? I was kind of DACA. What's your name? David. That's his Facebook name. Go ahead.
Some of the most insidious boundary violations that I've seen have been when we intend to help.
You've experienced that yourself?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Advice that comes in and overwhelms somebody else's opportunity to be their own person and find their own solutions. Things like that.
So again, my experience, very often, boundary violations are not malintended. They're well-intended, and they still do damage. So I think part of the antidote, thank you for that, is to start really getting connected. It's almost like imagining like a beach ball, or maybe a, what do you call it, like a, air mattress, something that you have to inflate. Inflating ourselves out to our edges, showing up inside of the system so that my edges are really intact, so that when you start to give me advice, and I've said this to friends, I've just been like, that's not what I want right now. I actually just really need you to listen to me. And I mean, let me tell you, this is years and years and years and years of practice, because eventually I just tolerate. Any tolerators in here? Endurers in here, right? Talk about going numb, you know what I mean? You're just like, well, I'm gonna check out of this friendship, but little do they know, I just won't be calling them back for, the foreseeable future. And I just go home and drown myself in whatever my, drug of choice is. So, and there's many forms. So instead of tolerating, instead of enduring, it's actually inflating out to our edges and finding our no's in connection to our true yeses. Okay, so we're gonna do the next partner exercise with you. So you can work with the same partner or you can find a new partner. It's entirely up to you. This is not personal. It's great. What was great about it?
Finding things for your partner to say no to.
Yeah. It's kind of fun, huh? Just knowing it's a no, it's kind of there's some freedom. Yeah, let's get Jess.
Well, we kind of forgot, so I think we put this up this time, but noticing when we did say it, like it felt like it was more exciting to say no, like it was more pleasurable to say no.
Good. I love that you said that. As you well know, I have most of my close friends trained to respond to my no's with a thank you for taking care of yourself, because what we're reinforcing is a culture of boundaries. And when I say my real no, and just like, I wish I could be at all places at all times, sometimes I have to rest. And it's really hard for me when I say my no. So my no is like, oh, it comes at a struggle and comes at a price for me. So when she says, thank you for taking care of yourself, it's like my no is welcome. You know, for folk, it's like, I'm worried that if I say no, I'll be what? Rejected, ostracized, judged, no. Thank you. Wow, that no means you care about our relationship enough to be authentic. It's a gift. So I just would love to install this. And I learned this from the practice of authentic relating. I'll say more about that at the end. But I love that you also had the experience of dropping it and bringing it back and feeling the difference. One more share back. Anand.
It was liberating.
Which part?
Saying no.
The no was liberating. Beautiful.
But it also felt safe.
And it felt, we're at the gym. We're at the intimacy gym here. So we practice in relative safety so that when we go out into the world of unpredictable variables, we have just a little bit of muscle. So I get it. My hope is that that safety can then settle something in you that can be available when you need it. Love that. Yes. Okay, one more.
It was good to know the difference between a false no and a yes no.
You
Like
noticed
a
it?
right no. Yeah, because I would often do very much for this one.
Oh. Yep.
But it was good to kind of like feel the difference and also be appreciated for that and vice versa.
Lovely. Good. Again, when we put no where we actually want to say yes, we can see the difference.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's again like, oh, there's a person in here. She has genuine desires. Okay, great.
Another refreshing moment.
Another refreshing moment. Nice breath on that. Okay, you ready for the second round on boundaries? Okay. Coming up with just offers.
Yeah.
I think,
Go ahead.
we have a super special relationship, so this was really lucky for us because we got to ask each other things that we really wanted to ask each other.
Lovely. Lovely. So when there's resonance, it can be like, wow, we can go deep fast, and then there can be like, what do I ask? How do I, it's really an improvisation game. And when we're not sort of warmed up into that, it can be like, oh, where do I start, and so on. And we start somewhere, right? What do I offer? And if there's a possibility that my offer would be rejected, or there could be a yes, there could be a real no, yeah, that changes how it feels a little bit, right? So it gets a little more real. I've been teaching these types of games, so I teach 2.5-hour long nights of playing games like this once a week. And you all are invited. I'll have more information at the end where we practice. And I can't tell how many people, and when I first started, same thing, I was just like, I don't know what to say. I have no idea how to go into this space. So we start where we start. Any burning shares before we do the next piece? Yes.
Well, this guy here is my best friend for almost like a decade now. So if anything, it was actually like a struggle to like come up with questions since we know each other pretty well. So it was like a bit harder since like we tend to like already know what we say yes to, what we say no to.
I hear you. Are you open to my challenging you? Just because I'm in teacher mode. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Are you open to being slightly challenged? See, I think I deal with a lot of long-term couples and like, oh, God bless, it's the highest spiritual practice to do relationship year after year after decade after decade, okay? And you've got all these years of best friendship. But we risk putting our relationship in a coffin when we stop thinking we can learn something new.
What was that?
We can learn something new. So the muscle, and it's nothing less than a muscle, it takes a lot of engagement is to see, the best wedding vow I ever saw, may you always be a stranger. Essentially, may you always be new to me. And in order for another person to be new to me, I need to have a practice of being new to me too. Yeah? So my guess is there's a threshold that if the two of you, any two people who know each other really well, could break through, there's everything else. You know, an infinite sort of pathway of discovery. New, new, new. There's a reason that a lot of relationships don't last. It's hard. I do. I got it. I'm like, there's a talk after, and I gotta finish it. No.
I felt like I don't want to use all my guesses.
Yeah.
There could have been something. better.
Sure. What's behind door number? You know. Yep. Donovan, and then the back, and then we'll keep going.
Oh, what was that quote again? You risk.
May you always be a stranger.
No, will you risk
Putting your relationship in a coffin. See me afterward for quotes. Go
Okay,
ahead.
yes.
I really like the way it reflected on life and how we're limited and how much we can do today, how much we can say yes
Good.
and throughout our days.
Lovely.
That was very revealing.
Lovely. Beautiful. There's so many different, these practices are just like mirrors. You kind of can't do it wrong, which is what's there to learn this time? What's there to learn this time? Did you want to comment? In the jean jacket? No? Yes? No? Okay. All right, my friends. So I'm going to go through the last 2 points just to kind of summarize. We could do exercises, but we are running out of time. So again, back on this concept of the culture of numb and how we wake our bodies up, you know, out of the amnesia and anesthesia. So 1, we have a culture of not feeling our feelings. The antidote is revealing. Number 2, we have a culture of a lot of injury around boundaries. What's the antidote? Practicing our no so we can find our yes. Number 3, projection. So this is a fun one. This is kind of like a complex psychology topic, but it's pretty easy to boil down. Projection is the thing all of us do to organize our world. So we walk through the world and we tell stories about people. You've been in the room with me for about 50 minutes. You're telling stories about me. And everyone else in the room too, but I'll just use myself as an example. So whatever stories you're telling, like she's fat, she's thin, she's kind, she's stuck up, she's whatever, you know what I mean? I like her, I don't like her. We're all telling these stories. I don't want to know them. But the main reason I don't really want to know, aside from the fact that it would be unproductive, is because they're not about me. So the thing what we do with projections is we source our unprocessed fears and we put them on the world around us. Now we do this to kind of navigate and keep ourselves safe. It's not a bad thing unless we forget to check the stories. And then we kind of delude ourselves into thinking the stories are real. I know everything about you, and I know what you're thinking about me, and I know what you're about to say. And then I actually forget to relate to this real person and let this world around me inform me about it rather than thinking, I know what's coming. I found this wonderful quote by a friend and a teacher of mine in Boulder that I think summarizes this piece so well. It goes like this. This is Josh Levin from Boulder, a teacher at the Integral Center. He says, when you and I have an interaction, there's what you say or do, and there's my interpretation of it. These are not the same thing. What you say or do and my interpretation. If I don't check out my interpretation with you and get on the same page, I'm not in a relationship with you. Guess who I'm in a relationship with? I'm in a relationship with me. Me. My interpretation and my feelings based on that interpretation. A big pile of me. No room for you. If I want to get back into relationship with you, I've got to notice that I've gone into interpretation land. I've got to return to the land of openness and curiosity. I've got to ask you what's true for you and listen. I've got to be more interested in actually knowing you than in being right. So good, right? Yeah. So good. It's on Facebook, and I'd be happy to send it to anyone who wants it. So being in relationship to you means I've got to be open and curious, which means I've got to be a little more vulnerable. I've got to let go of this idea that I think I know what other people are thinking and make room for this unpredictable, unexpected, unlikely world to act upon me, to impact me. So that's coming out of interpretation land, what Josh calls it. I call projection land, and actually coming into connection. So we're not going to do this exercise because we don't have time, but I'm going to show it to you, and I encourage you to practice it in your relationships. I'm going to keep borrowing you. Is that okay?
Sure.
You're sitting right there, so I'm asking permission. So I have the assumption that you are mad at me because I forgot to give you that wrapping paper last week. Is that true?
No.
Okay. What is true? You didn't want the wrapping paper to begin with.
I didn't want the wrapping paper.
It's true. I know. This is an aside. I'm moving. I'm basically trying to give my friends all the things I don't want. Oh, that was very generous of you to take it, considering you didn't want it. Okay. So,
Well, I'm trying to get you to give it to someone else.
I know, yeah, unsuccessfully. So to check an assumption is to go, hey, here's the story I'm telling in my head. Here's the story. And it's elaborate, and it's a wonderful fairy tale with a protagonist and antagonist and dragons and drama and highs and lows. Is it true? And the other person goes, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And I have to do it all the time because I work with humans, so I think I know humans. Little do I know. So, checking an assumption, I assume this. Is that true? Okay? I had a friend, someone I was working with say, I wonder how I showed up the other night. So we had a games night. She said, I wonder how I showed up. I said, you could ask. You know, you could take someone aside and go, what do you think about how I showed up? Do you see? It's like it's an invitation to get into real-time connection and ask for other people's frame of reference so that we're not stuck with our own frame of reference, which is necessarily always limited. We need every single point of view in this room to get a 360-degree snapshot of life. So checking assumptions that we come out of projection land, come into real-time connection, and can feel more. How am I doing on time? Oh, okay. So I'm gonna summarize for you. We're gonna summarize for you the last part of the talk. So how does all of this relate to sex? Okay, because remember that's what we were here to talk about, right? Remember way back an hour ago. Okay, so we'll do this. I'll just leave you food for thought at this point. But the thing is, when we are able to feel ourselves, feel real-time connection, honor our boundaries, and the other piece I didn't talk about today, but let go of shame. That's a big one. Save the best for last, okay? So I have a lot to say about that, and I won't be saying it today. But when we're able to do that, what happens is we can feel more. Put more simply, communication sensitizes us, okay? Sensitizes our psychic and emotional bodies, sensitizes our fingers and our toes and our clitorises and our penises. It sensitizes all of the nerve endings in this system. So we get into the bedroom, and then what happens? If we have a practice of being able to ask, 2 more minutes, I'm so sorry. If we have a practice of being able to ask, would you slow down? Would you move to the left? Would you touch me this way? Would you not touch me this way? Can we try this thing? I'm scared right now. This is really hard for me. My trash can's not working. When we have a practice, when we have a practice of doing that, connecting our insides with our outsides, when we get into the bedroom, we can feel. We can go at the pace that our sexual body needs. Our sexual body, like every other part of our body, this is true for all genders, needs to feel safe. Being able to be embodied in our communication will land us in safety in our lives. When we translate that to the bedroom, that is heart-connected sex. That is what I wish for all of you, and that is the end of my talk. Okay, so here's the offer. So next Saturday, I'm teaching a class where I do have enough time to develop all of these concepts. Saturday, December 9th, Connecting Hearts to Sex and Sex to Hearts, an introduction. It's a 3-hour communications course. All our clothes are on, just like this. We're just going to be talking and doing exercise. Well, you say sex and people wonder. So we're just going to be doing exercises. It's just south of here. For anyone who's at this talk, it's a $49 deal. The normal ticket right now is $69. So if you are interested, where's my sign-up sheet? Someone has it somewhere around the room. Okay, so we're going to put that sign-up sheet right there on this counter. The next talk is going to be coming in, but if you are interested in either getting on my newsletter or, and you can check the box, signing up for that class, just let me know. I'll give you a call tomorrow and we'll get you signed up. I'll be outside the door with questions. Thank you again so much for coming.